I would say a heavy portion of fish nowadays are caught using front-facing sonar. But my strategy I've always had with it, because I think it can actually hurt you and hurt your success, in addition to, like, obviously it helps you catch fish. What I do when it comes to front-facing sonar, I'm confident with it, and I've used it, you know, the northern tournaments, I always use it up there to catch more smallmouth. Sometimes when fish are out on bait, I use it a lot. But what I try to do is look at the type of fishing I'm doing. If I think that the fish I'm catching, if I think I can catch them better with the sonar, then I turn it on. If I think that covering water is more important than actually seeing them on the electronics and knowing they're there, then it's different. We had a bunch of southern tournaments, you know, this past season, and when I'm fishing docks or fishing wood up shallow, what tends to happen if you have your front sonar on, when you know these fish are on the docks, and generally a fish up on a shallow dock or shallow piece of wood, they're there because they want to feed. So I actually like to leave my electronics off when I'm doing that, because what tends to happen if you're running down the bank with your front sonar on, you're kind of looking around, you know, you're scoping around, you're looking for fish on the active target, and you see like a little brush pile, or you might see a fish. And then before you know it, your boat positioning is horrible. The most important thing shallow water fishing to me is boat positioning and efficiency in covering water. Well, when you're trying to use front sonar, when you're in, you know, 3-4 foot of water where you're just covering water, it makes you not position the boat well. I see guys all the time at like fishing shallow docks, and I'll turn around and be like, well, I can tell that guy's using his active target, because his boat he'll be going one way, then all of a sudden he's going the other way, then all of a sudden he's trolling out towards the middle of the lake, and then he goes back up fishing the docks. When that time you made a loop, yeah, you may have caught a fish or two, but you could have fished another 300 yards of bank throughout the day, if that's what you're targeting. I think it's one of those things to where you just have to use it to catch fish better if you think. Now, if they're on deeper docks or something like that, and they're on brush piles around docks, then it's a real effective tool. But if you're fishing, you know, shallow docks, something like that, I think it slows you down a lot trying to use it when you're not necessarily needing to use it. I think I need to be throwing a moving bait. You know what I wish I had that I think you might could catch a great big one on here right now? There's one. Oh, get out of the bushes. He's a strong fish. Not a huge fish, but a really strong one. Get in the boat. Oh, he's bigger than I thought he was. It's a good, healthy, shallow water fish. Pure eating bluegills. So this fish, like I was fishing down this bank, and you got all this wood on this bank, but that bush sticking out is a likely target that just covering water. I just threw to the longest bush sticking out, and that's where he's hanging out. Could I have seen him on front sonar? Maybe, but it's 1 to 3 foot deep up there. Be challenging, especially if he was holding tight up in that bush. So just covering water, catch you some quality fish. I think a lot of times your bigger fish, you know, the bigger quality fish in the lake, they'll actually hang out around some of the shallow covers. And I'm kind of trying to target, you know, maybe lone bigger fish on the shallow wood. They're in 1 to 3 foot of water. And yeah, I might see a few on my front sonar, but the time I spend trying to stop and look around each tree is probably wasted time when I could have fished 20 more trees. So I think it's one of those things that a lot of times when you're targeting single fish, you're better off covering a lot of water. If fish are up shallow, they're generally there for a reason. So in this shallow wood like this, if I land on one with this little Neko rig or Wacky worm, whatever I'm using, if I land on one, he's probably going to eat. So there's no reason to even know he's there before I cast. I'm just trying to land on all the likely targets. You kind of use your instincts to know like the likely targets that a bass will be on, you know, just from fishing, catching fish shallow for years and years is, I know that like that laydown that sticks out a little bit farther, or that one that's, you know, a little bulkier with different limbs on it, that's just a likely area to catch one. And yes, there may be a few pieces of cover, some wood maybe out off the bank that I would see on the front looking sonar, but there's plenty to target up visually. I think a lot is lost visually now with front sonar, especially a lot of times you don't catch like, I see all the time, I've seen it before on live watching other guys, is like they may be fishing down a bank, staring down at their front sonar, and a fish run bluegills up on the bank. And that's just an opportunity that you missed out without staying in tune with your surroundings. In addition, you gotta use your electronics at times, but you need to also make sure you're aware of your surroundings and kind of putting together instinctually what the fish are doing. So fishing down the bank like this, finesse fishing, just throwing at these likely targets. I like to use, slung my worm off, but just a little wacky worm, sometimes depending on the depth. Sometimes I like to have a nail weight in it, just a little finesse wide gap hook. And sometimes I use a trick worm, zoom fluke stick, depending on the depth really. Trick worm will get a lot more bites usually. Fluke stick a lot of times will get some bigger bites, but trick worm's a great bait to just, sometimes you put a nail weight, sometimes you don't, depending on the depth, and just cover water. Use my rod setup is a 610 Hartwell Magic spinning rod with a arc spinning reel, 10-pound braid, anywhere from 8 to 12-pound leader, just depending how thick the cover is. Some lakes you might need 8 because you're not going to run any fish, anything. Sometimes you can get away with 12 if you got a bunch of trees, bushes. But just a finesse Neko rig, wacky worm's a great way to catch fish. Just run down the bank, and you can actually fish it a lot faster than you think because you just catch them on the fall, basically. So nowadays in fishing, it's hard to forget about the offshore forward-facing sonar. But if you're ever not finding those fish out there or having success out in the middle of the lake with everybody else, don't forget about the bank. There's still a lot of fish that live on the bank, and honestly, they're getting less pressure now than they've ever gotten.